Welcome back, everyone. Happy to have another update, and a little bit less than 30 days from the last one, so hopefully I can keep that cadence up. Our last time we were talking about track work here in Butler, and I'm happy that we're done. It's all installed and operational, clearly not complete in terms of scenery, and that does include a 19-degree crossing here at what I believe is a prototypically accurate, in terms of the crossing at least being here, crossing of the spurs between Carter Lumber Company, which I was able to reuse the building from the last railroad, and International Staple and Machine, which was not even on my last railroad, and so now I believe, again, that that's appropriate for 1974. So happy to have some of this initial track work here in the first town at least complete. Looking also at Butler transfer. So here is the somewhat compressed 3-yard interchange between Bessemer and Lake Erie and the Chessie system. The prototype has 5 tracks, so not awful in terms of compression. Certainly, I believe it captures the flavor and spirit of that interchange. Yard is all finished here in Butler. 2 industry spurs in East Butler are done. And after a long back order delay, finally was able to get the railroad wireless. So I've got an NCE system here, and the old railroad was very compact and stacked with 2 layers or 2 levels, and I think I've used every single UTP panel so far just to be able to get coverage with the tethered throttles. So the wireless came just in time because I'm out of UTP panels, so happy to have gotten everything into wireless. I've got 1 wireless throttle, so should be in good shape moving forward. I think I'll probably have to do 1 wireless repeater for the other room. At least that's my suspicion at this point in time. Also, since the track work is finished in Butler, also made some progress on framing, and I've been able to complete all of the, at least wall framing, for the first peninsula here in the first room. They're actually the only peninsula here in the first room. So there's only 2 peninsulas on this railroad, 1 in each room, which seems to be the most efficient way to do it. 1 peninsula is usually more efficient in terms of track than 2. So all I've got to do now is continue with the bench work along the back side of all of this framing until I get down to the far end of the wall here at what would be Echo. And then I'm just running along the walls again. So I think, as I've mentioned before, I think the cadence hopefully will speed up a little bit. And I've also gotten spline in for the main line and the northern branch, or at least partially in. So previously the bench work stopped about here, and the spline was roughly in this area. So again, this is WS Tower. There's a single track here. You've got the yard lead and main to your left, and then to the right is Railroad East. Main line continues, the northern branch comes off, and there's a siding on the north side of the main line. In 74, I think this siding was still double-ended. As of now, according to aerial photography, it looks like it's been terminated at least partway through, and that's how I'm going to model it here. Otherwise I'd have to do another curved turnout, which I could do, but there's really no benefit to it because this siding in my operational scheme, and I think to a large extent prototypically accurate, was used for picking up and dropping off power here at WS Tower depending on the weight and direction of the train movement. So I don't know if I mentioned it previously, But while everything from East Butler to here to this point is level, around this this riser on both tracks, I started a 1% grade down, and the purpose of that is to try and get down low enough so that when I'm over in the corner at Echo, I can tie into that track for the Rural Valley branch underneath Butler. So wanting not to make it a tremendous grade, I figured I'd start it early and I could keep it at 1%. So that 1% grade follows the siding and the main line, but where the northern branch pulls off in order to get underneath the main, which it does do, that is a 3.5% grade. And the northern branch was a really, let's call it a unique and special branch, and often ran S2s or 3 or 4 or 5 S2s to run trains, limited to smaller locomotives because of the track condition and some of the wooden trestles, I think. So I don't think that this being a slightly steeper grade is going to be a problem operationally. I think it'll still work with the overall feel of that branch. And then about in between these two risers, or maybe at that riser, I can't remember, I leveled the grade out here. So the main line moving this direction, Railroad East, is now level, which allows for the northern branch to go underneath with the proper clearance. So I'm definitely happy with using the spline out here where we start getting into the very rural western Pennsylvania, just looking at the lines. Really nice having large diameter radii and having, as we talked about, super elevation. And again, still mostly with 4-axle diesels, so I think the trains are going to look very, very nice rolling in and out of these rural turns with the super elevation. And speaking of super elevation, at our local Blick art store, I found 1/4-inch wide masking tape. So I'm going to try this out, and if the adhesive is as reliable as normal masking tape, I think that's going to be the new plan moving forward, because I have to cut the wider stuff, and it works, just an extra step. And this is, if this works the way I think, we should just cross this out and write 1/4-inch model railroad super elevation tape, because this is perfect for that. So hopefully that will work out the way I intend. And I think the last thing I think I had it done last time, failed to talk about it. When the builder framed our house, when the builder framed the basement, unfortunately, he over-purchased lumber a little bit, which, given the price of lumber at the time, didn't thrill me. So I had some really long, I think 3 16-foot 2x4s left over, and they were left in a condition in the basement, partially my fault, that they just twisted. And so I cut them down into 8-foot pieces, so I had like 6 8-foot pieces, and I've used some of them. I think some of these twisted pieces are temporary braces. The ones that were remaining, I just had out in the garage in front of my vehicle, and they were kind of in the way. But given what I know I paid for them, I just couldn't bear to throw them away. So what I did is I ripped them into 1x4s to make legs and sides for 2 shelves, and built a tool cart. And it was just so terribly warped that as I made each leg, I had to clamp one side to the workbench and then clamp the other side to that, just to try and take as much of the warp out of it. And then before I assembled all of the plywood and to square it, I had to screw the whole thing down to my workbench to get it square, and then put in the plywood panels. So in addition to that, I've also weighted it. I've got a big chunk of railroad rail and screws and weights and everything. So it's not really, it doesn't really rock anymore. So I think it's starting to relax. But so a win-win. I used up some material, got it out of the way in the garage, and I have a tool cart. I didn't put a handle on it yet, but has casters on one end, or rotating casters on one end and solid on the other. But this is a really big benefit, especially in the size of this railroad. Now I can move the cart along with the work as I go. And the other real benefit, you can see I'm not the neatest in terms of tool organization. Anybody who's watched my previous videos from the old house, my workbench was notoriously a disaster. But what it does do is keeps the railroad a little bit cleaner. I'm not going to say perfectly clean. There's still some things floating around here, some weights and some other stuff, solder, but definitely keeps much more of the clutter off of the railroad. So happy about the tool cart. We're gonna keep using that. I'm sure it will more than earn its keep by the time we get to East Salamanca, New York staging yard, and looking forward to continuing to make progress. So that's the update for now. Hopefully next time we'll be here in another 30 days or so, and maybe we'll even have to run a train now that we've got a wireless throttle and don't need to unplug 37 times just to get from one end of what I've got finished to the other. So that's all for now. Look forward to seeing you again.